Hello again, and welcome to another watercolor video. Today we are going to be doing a simple landscape. We're not going to be using a ton of different colors, and we're just going to dive right into it. So, first thing we do is we have our 5x7 sheet of cold pressed watercolor paper, and we have it mounted down to our painting board. Now we're going to just wet the sky area a little bit. There we go. Get a nice even coat. Then we're going to let that sit for a minute. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of yellow ochre. Give a little light to the sky. A little yellow ochre. See how that just kind of burst out like that? That's one of the beauties of watercolor. Okay, now we got our yellow ochre. Now, I think we're going to use some ultramarine deep for the rest of the part of the sky. Look at that. Okay, a little bit more. A little bit in there, a little bit in there. Let it bleed together a little bit. Okay, now what we're going to do, rinse out our brush. Now we're going to take a little bit of a paper towel. Now because we're working on a 5x7, you don't want a huge piece of paper towel. We're going to dab out a little bit of clouds. So we're going to go from the bottom up. We got a little bit of crumpled up paper. And just going to dab. Okay, just a little bit of dab. There we go. We don't want to get rid of our dark blues or anything like that. We want to keep some darks. We want to keep a little bit of the light. We want to have a nice little contrast here. Okay, so now, since we did a little dabbing, it's a little dry now. Not completely, but a little bit. Take a little bit more of our ultramarine deep. And we're going to get the top and the corners. Okay, what we're going to do is, a little bit that we took off, we want to add back just for our nice contrast. Go through the clouds just a little bit. There we go. That looks like a good sky. Okay, now clean out our brush. And by the way, just so you know, right now I am using a 1/2" Princeton Neptune. It is a synthetic hair brush. It's a really nice brush. I got it at Blick Art Materials, and I had a coupon for like 20% off. So I think this brush actually only cost me, I want to say $10-12, and it's really nice. It's my workhorse. I use this brush mainly for my smaller pieces, let's say 5x7 and 4x6. I'll go up to a 3/4 for my 8x10s, and then up as we go. But for right now, I like it a lot. Okay, so we're going to use that same Neptune 1/2". We're going to get a little burnt umber violet. Yeah, I found this color from Daniel Smith, and I really like it. It gives you a nice earthy feel to it. It gives you the darkness that you can use for your mountains and stuff. So watch this. Look how good this looks. And it'll cover real nice too. But isn't that a pretty color? There we go. Now we're going to basically get all of this situated now. See, now you got the sky. You got an idea where you got stuff going. Now you're going to start getting your land masses. Okay? Whether you're painting in oils, acrylics, or watercolors, you always have to have a starting point. And it's a good idea to keep the same starting point for no other reason, just to keep yourself focused. So I always start with the sky and then move forward. So I'll start with the sky, then I'll go into the midground where we're at the moment, then I'll go into the foreground, and then once that all dries, if there's anything I need to add, then I'll layer on top of it. So I always go from top, middle, front, which basically is furthest away, medium away, and right next to you as far as perspective is concerned. Once I have that established, then I'll go in at the end with highlights, extra couple elements here and there, extra darks where needed, that type of thing. So it's nice to always have a system. And in art, you don't always have to. I mean, art is a very spontaneous medium, so you don't have to be relegated to, one system. I just like using a particular system to make it a little easier on myself. None of us are perfect, and we kind of, as humans, get drawn off the beaten path, as it were. Okay, I'm making this a straight line, which you normally don't want to do in art, but I am here because I'm going to have my riverbank go up on that. Just a little bit more dark. Put in here. There we go. That looks good. Okay, now what I want to do is take out a few highlights for the mountains itself. So basically what I'm going to do is all this area here that has the dark in it, which basically is the same value, that's going to be my dark. So now I'm going to lift out highlights on the edge of the mountains themselves, and that'll be our light. So that'll be our contrast. You see how we got the darker blue here with the lighter blue with the yellow ochre here? So that's our contrast there. That will be our contrast in our mountains. Now we're almost dry on our sky, so now we're going to finish it off. What I'm going to do is take a clean brush, clean water, and then dab it a little bit with a paper towel. You want your brush damp, not wet. So what I'm going to do is, see all these hard edges here? We're just going to lightly soften them up. Now I'm going to have a video in a little while, not sure when yet, on papers and the do's and the don'ts of paper, why professional paper matters and such like that. So I'll give you a perfect example right here with this. Even though I'm not pressing hard, it's a very good quality paper I'm using. It's a Canson product, 140 pound. But nothing is tearing. I'm not getting pieces of the paper chipping away or anything like that when I'm doing this with the brush. Cheaper paper, you're going to destroy it with any kind of scrubbing like I'm doing. And like I said, even though I'm not doing it hard, it'll still make a big difference on cheap paper. So try to get as best as you can. And the thing of it is too, always look for the sales. I've been painting for a long time, and I refuse, unless I'm desperate, I refuse to buy anything that's not on sale. And let's see here. Okay, now all of our hard edges are now bye-bye. And now we have the nice contrast. We have the lights, we have the darks. Now we have a very nice sky. Okay. Now, real quick. The reason why I waited so long on the sky, it wasn't completely dry, but it was damp. When it's too wet and you try to blend together, the water is just going to push all over the place. You're not going to be able to get a precise soft edge because the water will keep going back and forth even if you have a flat surface. Same thing with my mountains. I was doing the sky to let the mountains dry a little bit, not completely, to make it easier now to lift highlights. So I'm going to have a similar technique with the mountains lifting highlights as I did with the mountains blending the hard edges. I'm going to use a clean wet brush, but it's going to be damp. It's not going to be soaking wet. You're not going to have water dripping off it. Just going to be damp, and you're going to use your paper towel to dab it. It'll soak up most of the water. And then you want to follow your line. So follow the edge. See how that comes off? Then you dab it on the paper towel, and then you get the next peak. Dab it on your paper towel. You see where we're going with this? Now, you have to know where your sun is coming from, and it doesn't matter. Normally when you're painting, it's a 2D surface, so you're going to be going either from, the sun will be coming from the left or the right. It doesn't matter, it's whatever your preference is. I prefer, in this case, for whatever reason, the sun was coming from the left, aiming this way. So these sides, listen to my English, this side of each peak is what is highlighted, the rest of it is not. Once you make that determination though, you got to continue that throughout the rest of the painting. So if you put trees or anything that has highlights on it, make sure that you keep everything consistent. And if your highlights are on the left on the mountains, make sure they're on the left for your trees, rocks, whatever you have. Okay, now I would like a little bit more. So I'm going to lift off A little bit more in here. A little bit in here. A little bit in here. There we go. Now, one of the things with watercolors is they dry 50% lighter than when they are applied. That's happening to our mountain, okay? Now, if you recall, I added, after we dabbed our clouds, I added more of our ultramarine deep to make the clouds, the sky as dark as you see it. So that's why that's good. So we're going to add a little bit more of our burnt umber violet to the mountains. However, we're not going to use as wet of a brush as we did before. It's going to be a damp brush, just like when we took it out, because we want more pigment than water so we can get the dark. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. I have mostly pigment, less water, and look how deep that is. Look how deep that is. Now those highlights really stand out, don't they? Okay, rinse out our brush. Gonna dab it just to get all the big water off. Then take some more. And where your highlight is not, that's where you put this. And you don't have to be precise. This is nature. There's nothing precise in nature. Nature is all over the place. So you do have to have a little bit of rhyme and reason to what you're doing, but you don't have to be exact. I mean, look at a tree, a rock, a blade of grass. One of the beauties of nature is it's imperfect, but all those imperfections together make, unbelievable beauty. My wife and I are fortunate enough to live real close to the Morton Arboretum in Lisle, Illinois. And right now, we're talking the end of June, and we just had a huge amount of rain, so there's some areas of the river in there that are flooded. But the grass and the trees and the flowers are just in full swing, and it's absolutely beautiful. We go there and we'll sketch and take reference photographs, for hours on a Saturday or something. And it's just absolutely beautiful. And it's, relatively close to Chicago, so it's nice that you have that little reservoir type of thing, a reserve, I should say. Okay, so now this is drying a little bit more while I'm babbling. But we have a similar issue that we had in the sky. And this is what you have to look out for in watercolors. Watercolor is an incredibly wonderful medium to paint in, but you do have a couple of little idiosyncrasies with watercolor that you don't have in other mediums. And the biggest one that I had a difficulty controlling is the hard edge. And the hard edge, excuse me, I'm getting more paper towel. The hard edge is what we saw in the sky and what is starting to develop here. Now, there are some areas where a hard edge is a good thing. If you look at the top of the peak now, the whole edge that is adjacent to the sky itself, that's cool. In most areas, unless it's a misty day or something, and you look at a mountain with the background, you have a distinct line. That part I have no issue with. This one is where I have an issue. I want that softer, because when you do look at them, mountains, especially in the distance, that part of the mountain is going to blend together. So what we're going to do is we're going to we've let that dry a little bit. We're going to take our same damp brush, and we're not going to scrub this time. We're just going to mainly just diffuse it, I should say. Tap that. Almost the same idea as when we were putting in the highlights. You just want a little diffusion. You want it soft. Basically, once you learn to pick and choose your hard edges, that'll go a long way in helping your watercolors become believable and more fun. Because watercolors are very frustrating when it doesn't work out. And in the beginning, it doesn't work out. But the thing of the watercolors that I learned, and it took me a while to learn it, is if you just have fun with it and not take it too seriously. You have to take it serious to where you want to try and you want to practice and you want to get better. That's cool. But my point is, you don't want to be so consumed with a perfect line, a perfect shape, a perfect anything, that you take away from the reason why you started painting to begin with. To have fun, to relax, to enjoy yourself. So you learn the basics, hard edges, color theory, perspective, things like that. And once you learn those, just have fun and create art. We're going to be doing a lot of abstract work too. And abstract art, I never got into it before. I never really understood what it was, and I stayed away from it. For whatever reason, last year I started getting into it. I don't even remember if it was by accident or what. And I love it because you have so much freedom. It's basically putting color on paper in pleasing ways. Okay? And that sounds, a little odd, but it really is. It's a matter of pick your favorite colors, let's say, and mine are the blues and the greens area, and just put them on paper. Make the colors deep. Make the colors rich. Don't worry about what this line looks like. Don't even have lines. Diffuse everything. And it's amazing how it looks. And we're going to do some abstract work. We're going to do a lot of abstract work. We're going to be doing a lot of landscapes. We're going to be doing flowers. And we're going to be doing abstract work. And then the other stuff we're going to do is anything that you email me on my site and say, hey, John, I want to learn how to do this. And if it's something I've never done, we'll learn together. I don't care. I just want to have fun, and I want you to have fun too. Okay, now, all that babbling, boy, I can't speak today, helped get most of our painting dry. Yes, you can use a hair dryer and speed it up. A lot of people do. I also do at times. But if I would have used an air dryer, it would have sped up the speeding process, and I wouldn't have been able to babble on for 5 minutes like I did. So you would have been deprived of all my perfect, deep insights. And that would have been a crime, right? Ha. Okay, now. We are going to go with our water. Now, our water is going to be no different than our sky or our mountains. You have to have contrast. Now, I get it. Most places, the water isn't blue. I understand that completely. I'm 52 years old. I've seen very little, if any, water that's really blue. However, when you talk to the average person, blue is what they come up with water. Blue sky, blue water, green grass. Trees are brown trunks and branches, green leaves, and that's just the way it is. Whether it's business or art or anything else, to a large degree, perception is reality. If that's what people believe it is, that's what it is. Me, I prefer blue water. It just gives a very peaceful look. So even though water may not be blue, I'm making blue water. But you still need to have contrast. It can't be just a solid shade of blue. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Mayan Dark Blue from Daniel Smith. We're also going to use from Daniel Smith Ultramarine Deep, which is in the sky. Now, we could just go with the Mayan, but what I want to do is help unite the painting. So I used Ultramarine Deep in the sky. It's going to be also used in the water. It's just another little thing that you learn to help harmonize and kind of tie a painting together. Use the same color in more than one area of a painting. Okay? So we're going to start with our dark. And again, we're going to have a wet brush, but not, disgusting. And that color I haven't used in a couple days, so I gotta get a little bit more water on it. Okay, and we're gonna start. We're gonna have it thin here, and then the river's gonna bow out. But it's gonna follow our mountain line. So let's go with the mountain line first. Now, as you can tell, this is an extremely dark color. It's also a very beautiful color. Okay, so we got there. That's the thickest we're going to have for our river. The thinnest rather. And now, for perspective reasons, we're going to open it up. Now, once you start seeing it get lighter from there, you add more paint unless you want a gradated wash. In this particular instance, I do not. What I'm going to do is I am going to get the water situated. See, now that doesn't look bad, but artistically speaking, it's not a good idea to have the same value for any element in your painting all the way through. And this is the same value. So at that point in time, aesthetically it looks kind of nice. Yeah, it's blue, it's got a little bit of here and there. Yeah, okay. But in order to make it artistically pleasing and to fit everything else, we're going to highlight it. And what we're going to highlight is little ripples of waves. Now, for the water, we are going to cheat. Yes, you heard me right. We are going to cheat like you have never cheated before. And the only reason why I say we're going to cheat is because how am I going to say this? To the real hardcore traditionalist watercolor people, the only white in your painting is the white of the paper. I, however, do not subscribe to that. I like, and I got one of it in a half pan from, I believe it's Old Holland. They've been making paint since the 1700s, believe it or not. It's an opaque white. And with certain things, with certain highlights, water being one of them, I use it on a oil bristle brush that's a fan brush, and I'll show you it here if I can find it. There we go. It's an oil brush, oil and acrylic. It's a regular bristle, and I use my Old Holland opaque white, which I'm going to get out here in a second as soon as this dries a little bit more, and that's how I'm going to put my little stuff in. So we're going to let that dry and I'll be right back. Okay, I had to get my field sketch to do that. I apologize for not having it by me right away. And just to show you, while this is still, you can still see, and you can tilt your board to see glares, but you can still see it's still wet. And I want to make it not completely dry, but close to dry before I put in these highlights. And in the meantime, I'll show you what I take out with me when I go to the Arboretum, the zoo, anywhere. I don't leave my house without it. And this is my field sketch. The box I got from a set of 18 from Hobby Lobby, believe it or not. I didn't like the half pans they had in there. They're Master's Touch, and they're not bad. I mean, for a beginner, you can use those and still paint and have fun. I myself didn't like them, so I filled them up with my own. And I've got a bit of a variety here. I've got some Prima confections, which are actually pretty good. They're very inexpensive watercolor that I found is very good. I got some Old Holland, some Sennelier, and I think that might be it. I might have a Winsor & Newton here and there, but for the most part I think it's those. And what I like about the box is just a really sturdy, hard box. And I also, these I got to show you. I'll do a review on them in the not too distant future. These, I don't know if you can read it. Try to. It's a Raphael. Precision is the name of it. This one is 850046, a #1 round. And you can see it's tiny, and it's a travel brush. That's all it's designed for. And they come in packages of 3 for 20 bucks. Here's one of them. You got a filbert, a bigger round, and a smaller round. And you get your 40% off coupon at Hobby Lobby, and then you pay 12 bucks for them. And I tell you what, they fit right in my little watercolor set, my travel set. And they're very good brushes. I really enjoy working with them. So I'll do a painting with those in the not too distant future. I have a lot of paintings I want to do for you. And then what we'll do is I'll go over some of the brushes and show you kind of the pros and cons and what I prefer. But I tell you what, one of the things you can look at is you want to get as good a paper as you can, but get it on sale. You don't want to get the real inexpensive paper. I really don't recommend anything below 140 pounds. I personally do not like 300-pound paper. Working with it's not bad. It does absorb a really whole lot of water, so that takes getting used to. I don't like it because it's difficult to mat because it is so much thicker, and then adhering the mat to the painting is a little more challenging. So the 140 is a very popular size, but you can get this stuff on sale at Blick when they have their sales, and you buy a couple of them. So that's where I get my paper from, and I'll show you while we're letting that dry a little bit. This is hot press that I use once in a while. This is a 9x12 pack from Blick. It's Premier. It's a block. 100% cotton, which is big time. You want 100% cotton. You want acid-free. This is archival. This block of 20 sheets, I want to say, cost me like 24 bucks from Blick. So at that point in time, you're talking about $2.15, $2.10 a sheet. So it's not a bad deal whatsoever. Arch is ARCH. It's a French company. They make paper and blocks too. They're significantly more expensive, and I've used their paper, and it's very good paper, but I don't see a big difference between that and the Blick Premier that I just showed you. The Blick Premier is actually very good, and I'm not affiliated with them whatsoever, but they do have good deals. So you got to get decent paper. You want to get pretty good paint. Blick can get good paint deals on. Jerry's Artorama. There's a bunch of places online you can get it for. Very, not inexpensive, but much less than other places, so you do a little shopping. Brushes you don't have to go as crazy with. I showed you those Raphaels. This is a Master's Touch Hobby Lobby brush. It's a synthetic squirrel, and it's made for watercolor. They hold together nice. I abuse my brushes pretty good. You see the way I scrub and things. And I tell you what, they got them half off on a regular basis. This is a number 4. I'll bet you this cost me, $5. And it's lasted me so far. I've had it at least 8-10 months, I think. And look at it, it's still in great shape. The ferrule holds on well. So just look around for your supplies and you'd be amazed at what you can do. Okay, now that I'm done rambling for a minute, it looks like we are dry enough to where I can add our highlights. Now if you use this technique, it's easy in one way, but you've got to be careful. If you look at the way it's rounded, you don't want to just stick it in. What you want to do is you want to get at least just one side, okay? And then you want to be careful of what you do. And then once you put it on, you want to do a light little scrub. So I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. I'll even show you how I'm putting it on. Here's my opaque white. I'm only putting on half. Okay? Get a lot of paint on there. So then I'm going to, it doesn't matter where you start, but I like to start from the beginning. And you're going to do a little dab. Okay, see that? Now that's real thick. And you don't want it to be that thick, but you got to lay the paint out first. Okay, now right now that looks really bad. Unfortunately, it's supposed to. Ignore it. You're going to fix it here in a second. Rinse out your brush to get all the white out, then use your paper towel and dry it. It doesn't have to be perfectly dry, but you want almost nothing. Barely damp at all. Now what we're going to do is a light, very light. And we're going to scrub that in to our water. And you can probably hear the brush on the paper. A little more water. There we go. Now we got all of our light parts diffused, okay? So now, just like I promised before, a little ultramarine deep. We're going to still use the fan brush. Now this time we're going to use the whole brush, so it doesn't really matter. Now you're going to take wherever you had your white, you're going to go on different areas. You don't want to kill your lights. You want to leave a lot of the white showing, but you want to get a little more of this. So now we had our darkest Mayan blue as our base. That's right there. Now we have our lighter white. Now we have our ultramarine blue, which isn't going to dry that much lighter because we're layering it. This is our third layer basically. Okay. Now we have that done. A little more white on almost a dry brush. And now we're going to do like this. A couple of places. That's it. I don't want it a lot. Now, basically what I'm doing is I am fidgeting to my preference. Everybody has their own eye. I didn't think I had enough lights, and I want a little bit more ultramarine. There we go. Now I'm done with my water. Okay. Now, the water, if you're used to paint... Okay, I don't know how much of that got interrupted or what. My camera for some reason turned off. So, if you're used to painting, that looks good the way it is. Obviously not a completed painting, but you know the element looks correct. If you're not used to it, you're going to say, wow, that just doesn't look good. So, one of the things that you can do when you are a beginner is just fill up the white as quickly as you possibly can. If you have a good idea where all your elements are going to be, you can put a light wash of whatever. Once you got the sky done, you can put in just a basic wash of the mountain, the basic wash of the river, and then a basic wash of the land, and then go back and do the highlights and added the darks and everything else like we did before. So it's entirely up to you if you want to go through each element like we did, or we put everything together and you build later. I prefer doing it this way and taking one element and tying it into the previous element all at once. That's my preference. That's how I learned how to paint, and that's what I do. This is art. You can do however you want. So now we're going to go back to our 1/2 inch Princeton Neptune. It's kind of a cool looking sound. We're going to go into our light green. And then we are going to now finish off the white. So we're going to start along here. Now, there are winter scenes, there's fall scenes, there's all kinds of scenes without green grass. I personally, my two favorite times of the year are spring and summer, other than Christmas. I'm a Christmas kid at heart, always have been. But as far as seasons goes, I love fall. The changing colors is beautiful, but I love the vibrancy and the life of all the greens and blues with the waters and the sky and the grass and stuff. And there is one other method to my madness. You need blue to make green. So when you bud up a blue river to a green meadow, it fits perfectly. It's what they call a harmonious color, and it works extremely well. Okay, so now we got our base here. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to add a few distant trees on this tree line, and we're going to use our fan brush again, and I'm going to show you a technique that basically you put straight in and you flick. Technique is for oils and acrylics as well. That's how you make distant grasses, trees, whatever you want to do. We're going to make foreground grasses with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some dark green, and I'm going to mix a little bit of ultramarine blue with it, just a little bit. Then I'm going to start at the river edge and flick up. Get a little bit more paint. Now, if they look faint, that's good. They're supposed to. They're in the distance. You're not going to see a lot of detail, and you're not going to see a lot of anything. But you got to know they're there. Okay. Now, if you've noticed, we went and put a little bit of it into the water. That's fine. You take your same fan brush, clean, damp, not crazy wet, and lightly smooth it out. Now they're on the bank where they belong. Okay. Now I am very not happy with my water at the moment. So what I am going to do is take one of those little brushes that I showed you about that are my travel brushes. I'm going to take the filbert, this one here with the rounded, and I'm going to try and lift some highlights off. Now the reason I'm using this particular brush is this has been drying for a little while, and this brush is a little stiffer. It's synthetic. It's not a real coarse brush like an oil brush, you know, a hog bristle or anything, but it's still a little bit on the stiff side, so I should have a good chance of being able to lift. And I can. Cool. It is working good. You just got to make sure you keep the water coming. Again, wet, but not crazy wet. Damp. And you just scrub where you want. And again, this is where the good paper comes in, because it's not breaking apart. It's allowing me to do it. go. And this is painting in any medium. As you go along, you're going to have stuff that you like and you don't like. Areas that you can start and go ahead with, and areas you have to go back and finish. Make adjustments. You constantly make adjustments when painting, and that's not a problem. Now I got the water looking the way I want. Okay, so now, just for consistency purposes, we're going to keep using that 1/2-inch brush that we're talking about. And I'm going to put a couple of rocks in here. Now, if you remember, the color of our mountains was burnt umber violet. You'll never guess what color our rock's going to be. If you said burnt umber violet, boy, you are good. And just put a couple of rock shapes. They don't have to be perfect. Make them dark. The darker the better. The highlights come later. There we go. Now, we're also going to put in some little reeds and stuff. We're going to go with dark green to start with. That same brush. What we're going to do is we're going to basically tap. You don't want a lot. You want enough to know they're there. Perspective purposes, it's going to be smaller to the further side, and then as the water gets bigger, so does your vegetation here. Thicker and taller. Okay, now let's clean this up on the bank. Just as we did on the top bank with those distant ones, we'll do here for consistency. Now we're going around all these, and you don't have to be perfect with this because we're going to have blades of grass coming in here in a little bit. And I'll show you. But we got to wait and get the highlights on our rocks first. Once we get the highlights on the rocks, then we'll put the blades of grass in all over it, and we'll be just about done with our painting. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I used lifting to get that off for the mountains. I'm wondering if I should just, I'm going to keep it consistent. I'm going to lift. So what I'm going to do is, now I got to change my brush. And I'm going into a bright, they call it. It looks like a flat, but it's a lot, it's not as long as the bristles. So it's a little easier to get it. And the only reason I'm doing this bright is because these are much smaller than the mountain. But we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do its left side because our sunlight is coming from the left. Get that around it. And this is where you can put the shape to them too. I just put down anything. That's where you can put down your shape. And like I said, we're going to have grass, blades of grass, covering some of this. So it will all come together real well. So you just got to be patient. The thing with painting is you got to be able to see a little bit into the future of what you're doing. Know what you're going for, and that the steps that you're taking are necessary to get there. Okay. Now we've got our highlights, so we're going to do the same thing we did with our mountain. Damp brush so we have more color. And then we're going to add that. Okay, and then the last thing, just like we did, we're going to blend it together. So it looks like It truly is a shadow of each other. There we go. And all the hard edges go bye-bye. Okay. Now we are going to finish up. So we're going to take our bristle brush and we are going to take some dark green. We're going to start with that for the rocks. We're going to do the same thing we did to the background distance. See how that looks? Now that's basically anchoring our little rocks down. But we're not finished. Now we're going to take some Cad Yellow Deep. Cad Yellow Deep is one of my favorite colors. It's absolutely beautiful. It has a slight orange to it, but it's real nice. And then it's going to be for our bank. You can't have just the green. There we go. Now the last thing we're going to do, a little bit of alizarin crimson. Be like wildflowers surrounding everything. And then we're also going to take a little bit of the alizarin crimson and just with the corner of the brush, like little flowers, hovering over our beautiful river. Okay, now that, ladies and gentlemen, moms and dad, children of all ages, is a 5x7 watercolor painting. You don't have to have any special skills, as you saw. I didn't have, the spirit of John Singer Sargent come and guide my hand. It's just a matter of practice. If you practice, you buy decent materials, and you keep at it, you can paint extremely well. You can paint better than me, depending on how much work you put into it. So just, above all, have fun, and I'll see you next time. You have a nice day.